All right, let's just jump right into it. There are very few things a client can ask for that are as packed with hope and as full of potential pitfalls as the offer in compromise. They see a way out, you see a maze of regulations and professional responsibilities. Your client probably thinks an OIC is some kind of magic wand that's just going to make their tax debt vanish. But for us as CPAs, it's a straight up ethical minefield. So think of this explainer as your map for getting through it and for turning you from just a preparer into a real strategic advisor. Before we even think about touching a form, we have to get our heads straight about what an OIC really is. And, even more importantly, we need to understand our professional duties under Circular 230. This is the bedrock we build everything on. Now, this is the single most important distinction you need to make for your client. An OIC is not a giveaway. It's not a forgiveness program. It's a formal deal based on very specific, provable grounds. Our job isn't to go beg for a favor. Our job is to build a rock-solid case that proves one of these conditions actually exists. So how do we build that case? Well, we're going to organize our whole game plan around 3 key pillars. First, we need to understand the IRS collection process inside and out. Second, we have to master client communication. And third, we have to guarantee long-term compliance. These 3 C's, that's your playbook. And the referee for this whole playbook? That's Circular 230. And you got to see these sections as more than just rules. They're your shield. They demand due diligence on every number you submit, best practices in every single conversation, and a hard no to filing some frivolous hope and a prayer offer. Okay, let's get practical with our first C, collection. This is where we stop talking theory and start dealing with the hard numbers and the cold, technical formulas the IRS lives by. And this chart right here, it says it all. This is the first dose of reality we have to give our clients. They walk in the door with 100% hope, but the data, the hard numbers? Well, the IRS might say acceptance rates are around 30 to 40%, but in the real world, it can often feel a lot closer to 25%. Managing that gap is job number 1. For the vast majority of cases you're going to see, it's all going to come down to this: doubt as to collectability. And the critical point here is that the IRS is not asking if your client wants to pay their debt. The only question on the table is, can they physically pay it? And that brings us to the absolute heart of the matter, the reasonable collection potential, or RCP. The whole thing boils down to this one number. The IRS has a very strict formula to calculate it, and whatever offer you make has to meet or beat that number. Your entire case lives or dies on getting this calculation right. So, we've got the technical side down. We understand RCP, but now we have to shift to the art of this process, communicating these, let's be honest, pretty harsh realities to your client. This is our second C, and let me tell you, this is where a lot of these engagements go right or horribly wrong. I'm not exaggerating when I say this is the most important conversation you'll have. The client comes in thinking it's a simple fix. You have to be the one to tell them, no, it's an incredibly intrusive deep dive into their finances. They're dreaming of a fresh start tomorrow. You have to break the news about the 5-year compliance period that only starts after the offer is accepted. This one conversation sets the tone for everything. And like we said, this isn't just me giving you good advice. It's your ethical duty under Circular 230. Communicating clearly, nailing down the facts, that's a best practice. So look, take it from me. A special engagement letter that spells out all these realities in black and white, it's completely non-negotiable. Which leads us right into our final C, compliance. Because getting that OIC accepted isn't the finish line. Nope, it's actually the start of a 5-year probationary period, where one little misstep can bring the whole house of cards down. And just look at this timeline. It really paints a picture, doesn't it? The day that offer gets accepted, a 5-year clock starts ticking. For 5 full years, that client has to file every single return and pay every single tax dollar on time. One missed payment, one late return, and boom, the IRS can default the whole deal, and that original debt comes roaring back to life with all the penalties and interest included. And these are the terms of the contract. It's non-negotiable. The client has to get that they are signing a binding agreement. They give up their right to ever challenge that debt again. A default could mean immediate liens and levies. There is, and I mean this, zero room for error. All right, so let's bring this all down to earth. In the real world, you're pretty much guaranteed to run into one of these 3 types of clients.
and each one brings their own special brand of challenge to the table.
First up, we've got the non-filer. You might have heard them called congressionally challenged. We're talking years of unfiled returns, and they have almost no clue what their future obligations are. With this client, your job becomes part private investigator just to get them filed up, and then part adult babysitter to make sure they don't blow up the OIC on day one. Then you've got the ostrich. This is the person who's had their head buried in the sand while a small tax bill has just ballooned into a monster thanks to penalties and interest. Now, with the ostrich, your first move should not be to jump straight to an OIC. You have to explore all the other options first, because a simple installment plan might be a much better and way less invasive fix. And finally, there's the pyramidder. This is usually a business owner who just keeps stacking new tax debt on top of old tax debt year after year. This client is a walking red flag. The IRS is going to be incredibly skeptical, and you have to ask yourself the really tough question. Is this person even capable of changing their habits enough to meet the OIC's strict rules? And that all leads us here, to the end game. After you've done all the analysis, crunched all the numbers, and had all those difficult conversations with your client, at the end of the day, it all comes down to your professional judgment. So here's the ultimate question you have to ask yourself. The forms are done, the check is sent, but have you really prepared your client for what's coming next? Because your real value here isn't just about filling out Form 656 correctly, it's about making sure your client understands and can actually survive the entire 5-year journey. That's the difference between being a preparer and being a truly indispensable advisor.